Hey everybody, one half of your humble hosers here. As Sterling likes to point out, Canadian info warrior Destry McLean. So, I've just watched the Philando Castile dashboard cam, and my thoughts on it are that it went bad. It went really bad. I don't believe the officer is guilty of misconduct. In fact, I think the dash cam video shows you can hear the shakiness in his voice afterwards. You can hear that there was regret there. He didn't want to shoot Mr. Castile. And I think what happened was he had asked for Castile's license and registration. Castile was reaching for that at the same time as telling the officer that he had a firearm. And honestly, I think that's where it went wrong to begin with. Because, and I don't want to blame Castile, I don't think anybody in this situation was wrong in what they did. But I think the situation could have turned out differently had Castile simply kept his hands on the steering wheel when he was asked for his license and registration and made his statement, "Sir, I have to tell you that I have a firearm," and left his hands on the steering wheel until the officer instructed him on how to proceed. And I think that's something that firearm owners and carriers have to be aware of when pulled over by police. And I don't think the fact that he was black had anything to do with it either. You know, it started out really nice. The officer was probably just going to let him go with a warning about, I think it was a tail light he pulled him over for. And he was probably just going to let him go with a warning if he had, checked his registration and insurance and saw that everything was in order. And obviously it just went really bad. But I think that that's something that firearms owners and carriers need to be aware of, is that, when a cop pulls you over, keep your hands on the wheel until they instruct you about how to proceed after you've informed them that you have a firearm. I also think that there's possibly room for improvement in police training. I mean, with all the shootings that we've seen like this over the last few years, there's obviously massive room for improvement with police training. But in this particular case, I don't think there's really a lot of room for improvement there. I mean, I think the officer did everything right, except I think maybe he reacted a little too quickly when he fired. A lot of you are probably going to take me to task on that, saying that I'm understating it. I'm not trying to understate it. Police have to make split-second decisions, and if he really feared that Philando was reaching for his firearm rather than his license and registration, then, his decision was for the sake of his life, his partner's life. And, this is just a stop. He doesn't know who the woman in the passenger seat is yet. For all he knows, maybe this guy's got a gun and he's kidnapped them. He doesn't know. So he had to make a decision, and I think The officer wasn't quite clear enough, though, with Philando, and rather than firing when he did, he should have told him to get his hands up, because he didn't actually do that. He states later, after the shooting, when you can hear him still talking on the dash cam video, he states that he told Castile to get his hands up, and he didn't. Well, no, he didn't tell Castile to get his hands up. What he said was, don't reach for it. And so, obviously, in Castile's mind, he was like, yeah, I'm not reaching for my gun. I'm reaching for my license and registration, which is what you asked for. And so I think instead the officer should have said, put your hands on the wheel, put your hands on the dash, something, get your hands up. If he had worded it differently, even, maybe it would have turned out better. Maybe Castile would have realized that the officer was about to shoot him. It's a horrible situation, the way it went down. And, we can all look at it in hindsight and say, Castile should have done this, the officer should have done that. But really, there were only two, in my opinion, mistakes made. One is that the officer didn't tell him to get his hands up. He just told him to stop reaching for the gun, or don't reach for it. And two is that Castile never should have been reaching for anything. Knowing that he had a firearm in the vehicle, he should have kept his hands on the wheel in plain sight and let the officer instruct him. And that's that. Maybe you'll tear me apart in the comments. Maybe not. Let's see. One half of your humble hosers, signing off.